explicitly define what you want to say and how to say it. So you have to define business rules and text templates. It doesn't make any error, at least if you are a good programmer. And the systems that are used in production today, so for instance, at Société Générale, BNP Paribas, where I work, and Moody's and a lot of companies, it's quite common today. And it requires a specific piece of software, which is called NLG engine. And Rosae NLG is a NLG engine. So what are the use cases for NLG? What is it used for? So one first big category of use cases is producing product descriptions. So you describe a product based on its features. I give an example later on. The main, let's say, industrial use case is to produce structured reports like risk reports or fund performance report in the financial industry. So in banks, you are quite fond of this kind of reports, and we wish to be able to automate their production instead of having someone writing them manually. You can also describe a situation. So typically, if you have a lot of client data, you can summarize client data before actually meeting the client. You can also do a report of a visit of an office for real estate. This is another use case example. And at last, it's also used to generate well-formed chatbot answers. So when what you need goes beyond fill in the blanks templates, you can use NLG to produce chatbot answers. So let's have a look at an example. So this is JSON data about a jewel. So we have structured information about the metal. So it's white gold, about the category, the brand, and the stones, the purity of the diamond, the size of the diamond, the number of diamonds, etc., the weight of the jewel. And the idea is to be and to generate a nice text based on that data to describe this jewel. So this is typically the kind of text that you can generate with an NLG based on this data. So these are real text produced by a natural language generator. So if you look at the text on the left and on the right, they look different, but in fact, they tell exactly the same thing. You find exactly the same information within it, but the way to say it is different. And actually, you can generate thousands of different alternatives. They will all say the same thing, but some will look better than others. In fact, one of the challenges is to be able to choose the best alternative, the one that will sound better. Those two ones are actually not that bad. If we stay on the jewel example, let's look at another one. So on the previous one, we described a ring. And here we want to describe rings. So we have still the same kind of input data on the left. So here it has two stones, two diamonds, etc., etc. And the issue here is that it's a plural. Because ces boucles d'oreilles, these rings, it's plural. So you have to agree everything in plural. So for instance, here you have pairs, which is plural. If we look at another strange thing, which is actually French specific, just after pèse 3 grammes, you say composé d'or blanc. And in fact, le composé, you would expect it to agree with ces boucles d'oreilles, which would be feminine plural. But in fact, you agree it with something that comes much later in the sentence, which is ce bijou. So in fact, here you are still talking about ces boucles d'oreilles, so something that is plural, but using a masculine singular word, which is ce bijou, and you have to agree with ce bijou. So this is one of the issues that natural language generation engines have to cope with. So this is another example, which is less funny, which is about financial fund performance. And here the idea is to be able to comment the monthly performance of funds. So typically you describe the performance in general. So here it made +3%, and also compared to the benchmark. So for financial funds, the goal is always to outperform a benchmark. And after that, you deep dive in the performance per country, per sector, saying what was part of the fund behaved properly and what made losses. This is typically the kind of comments that can be completely generated automatically. So how do you set up this kind of software? You create what we call energy.
Ludan, je me permets de te déranger. Est-ce
Ouais.
que tu es toujours à la slide 5 là ou
Ah non, je suis à la 9. Vous êtes toujours sur la 5?
parce qu'il y a un décalage en fait là, je crois.
Ah, too bad.
On va essayer de régler ça avant. Merci pour les gens qui l'ont fait remarquer. Ouais, je pense qu'on peut représenter. Tu peux représenter le truc.
So here I'm on slide 5 and I should switch to slide 6. Do you see the table on slide 6?
Ouais. Ouais.
And
Yes.
the first time you see it, you did not see it before. We were back to slide 5.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll get back to this slide. So here the idea, you have two sample texts that were generated by this data. They say exactly the same thing. The content is exactly the same, but the layout and the way to say things is completely different. And with the same templates here, we can generate more than 2,000 texts that look different, but that say the same thing. Here I switch on slide 7. So please, each time, if you are not, if it doesn't switch to the good side, please tell me. So this was the example on earrings. I'll go faster than on that. So the idea.
We're still on the slide 6.
Ah, too bad. That's not good. What happened?
I don't know where it comes.
I'll jump back.
5 now. On t'entend pas. Faut que tu te démutes.
Okay. Are you able to see slide 7 with the
Yes.
text
Okay.
earrings, fabulous text on earrings? And now, are you able to see the fantastic performance of financial funds on slide 8?
No.
What?
No.
Why? You
Ah,
should.
yes, no. Now we can see it.
Oh,
Attends,
okay. It takes some time, but you are able to see slide 8. So slide 8 is a performance of financial fund. So it's another sample of natural language generation. I'm switching to slide 9. Are you able progressively to see slide 9 appearing?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So what are energy text templates? So this is the way to make the setup of energy engines. So they will actually combine static text because some of part of the text are completely static, they don't change. They will also contain structures, typically conditions, making some parts of the text appear when some business conditions are met, or loops or lists. They will contain energy-specific functions like agreements functions or conjugation functions, and also local processing using code. So typically, before outputting a list, you just wish to filter it or to sort it. So this is done directly in the template using code. And these templates, they are run by a specific template engine, which is what we call an NLG engine. So here I show an example of NLG template. So here I'm on slide 10. Please tell me if it doesn't appear. So on the left.
It's okay.
Great. Takes delay, but it finally appears. So on the left, you have the template, which looks quite messy, but it looks like code. And on the right, just below render text, you have the result. So how do you read that? You have he, which is here static text, but it's automatically capitalized because it's the beginning of the sentence. You have the verb to eat that you wish to agree in the past, so it's able to agree and in the past and generate ate. After that, we list different fruits that I actually ate, so orange, pear, and apple. You can see that a orange, which is static in the template, gets transformed to an orange. So the engine automatically manages contractions, changes a orange to an orange. Second sentence lists the favorite fruits. So we have a list of fruits that are put in plural, and you can here check or discover, like it was the case for me, that the plural of avocado is avocados with a S, but for mango, it's not mango with a S, it's mango with ES. Why not? So it's able to manage plurals depending on languages. I'm switching to slide 11. So what are the features expected from NLG engine? So in fact, there are 4 main features which are expected. First one is the ability to enumerate elements, A, B, and C. We saw the example with the fruits just before. The ability to agree verbs, noun, and adjectives. This is the 3 things we wish to agree. To use synonyms and referring expression to avoid repetitions. It's important to have a nice text. And at last, the proper punctuation, spacing, and capitalization and contraction. In fact, I think the fourth one is maybe the most important one. Some features will obviously depend on the output language, like agreements. And yeah, you may wish to use just string concatenation or standard template engine to generate text, so this also works. But if you wish to do a real NLG project without an NLG engine, it will be a real nightmare. So my advice is to use an NLG engine if you do an NLG project. So let's now switch to Rosai NLG. So it's the open source software I am the author of. So it's an open source MIT natural language generation product. So it offers the same features as a Bonder solution. So here I'm on slide 13. If it's not the case, please tell me. So it's designed to be developer and IT friendly because I like developers and I like IT. So it uses standard languages like JavaScript. You make the template development in VS Code, so which is very practical to actually make development. You have syntax highlighting. The templates that you develop are easy to test. They are easy to CI/CD. They are easy to integrate, etc., etc. The configuration of the templates follow the format of Pug. So some of you may know Pug. It's a very popular template engine used in the JavaScript world and also in the Python world. I think there's also a Java port somewhere. And the local processing in templates, the code is just written in JavaScript. It exists, it's shipped either as a JavaScript library in NPM or a browser standalone library, or through a Java library. You can download it on Maven Central. And you have also a microservice implementation, which is shipped either as a Docker image or as a AWS Lambda functions. And it's able to generate English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. And I had contributors on Italian and Spanish because I don't speak a word of Italian and Spanish. So you remember the 4 features. So I'll just explain how I chose to implement that in Rosai NLG. And what actually is difficult in implementing that, because some features might seem, let's say, mundane. So when enumerating elements, which is the first main feature, in fact, the issue is the ability to identify texts that are empty. Because when you have a list, the engine will need to know which elements are empty actually before generating them, so that it's able to put the separators, like the comma and the and, at the right place. And in fact, each element of the enumeration can itself be dynamic. It can be static text or conditional text, but it can be another enumeration or whatever. I think it's better if we look at an example. So here I'm on slide 16 with a template example. So how do you read that? You have a small template describing a phone. So it contains some static text at the beginning, which is the phone, and then a list of 3 properties of the phone. So the size of the screen, the colors it exists in, and the size of the battery. And in fact, for the battery, we just say has a larger battery only if it actually has a big battery, if the Boolean big battery is set to true. And we just, this is the last line of the template, we just generate it twice, one for a phone that has a big battery, and no, one for a phone that doesn't have a big battery, and the second for a phone that has a big battery. In fact, if you look at the 2 sentences that are generated below, the 2 I put in yellow, the separators, when you generate, in fact, the first end, which is in yellow, between has a 6 inches screen and exists in red and black, you have to know that the third item will be empty. You have to know before actually generating it that the third item will just be empty because it doesn't have a large battery. So how do you predict that? How do you do that? In fact, it's quite simple. You have to operate in 2 steps. So the energy engine will just go through each item, trying to generate the text, just to evaluate which elements are empty or not. And once it knows which elements are empty or not and the total size, it will be able to generate the final text. So it's a 2-step process, which uses a stack mechanism because it has to move forward and go back. And it also has to use a seeded random engine because, in fact, it uses random numbers to generate synonyms. And the issue with some random numbers is that they are random, but we want the same random numbers to be used for the prediction and for the rendering. That's why I use a seeded random engine. So this is, I think, the main thing that distinguishes an NLG engine from a templating engine. Templating engine starts from the beginning, advances, and goes to the end of the text. It just executes linearly the template, while NLG engine has to move forward and go back to once it had made some decisions. The second big feature is the agreement of verbs, noun, and adjectives. So I'll go faster on that. So the issue here is to either use rules to make agreements or linguistic resources. So some linguistic resources, you might already know them. So the left for French, Morphit for Italian. The issue with linguistic resources is that they actually don't work out of the box. So I had a lot of surprises. For WordNet, if you check the plural of browser in WordNet, it will tell you, no, it's not browsers, it's brethren. And actually it exists, but the typical plural for browser in English is still browsers. In French, you have the same kind of issue. So œil, I would say that the plural of œil is yeux, but Lev says it can be either yeux or œil with S. So actually, if you speak of the Windows œil de bœuf in plural, you say œil de bœuf with S, etc., etc. And there are also licensing issues because I want to keep compatibility with MIT, and this is especially particularly difficult with German, which they love dual resources for linguistic resources. The third group of features is synonyms. So it's not completely automatic. The user has to indicate when creating the templates the synonymic alternatives. So here I'm on slide 19. If it's not the case, please tell me. How does it work? In fact, it's globally based on random. The engine will just choose a random alternative in the list or a non-consume alternative in the list, which is choosing first and second and third. And if we check this example, this can lead to repetition in the final text. So here in this structure, I have defined 2 synonym alternatives for coffee. I can say either I appreciate coffee or I love coffee. The engine will choose randomly the first or the second alternative. And after, there's just static text, which is I love tea. Which can generate either I appreciate coffee, I love tea, which is good, or I love tea, I love coffee, I love tea. And here you have a repetition of love, which is not nice. So here, the way to do it is to use, to encapsulate everything in a choose best structure and we choose best, actually will generate multiple times a defined section, and we'll choose the best textual alternative globally. So here it will generate the same text 20 times randomly, and it will choose the best alternative using a tokenizer and a stemmer to see which words are duplicate or too close in the sentence. And on this example, it's quite trivial. I would have had other ways to solve it, but on a more complex text, it's actually much better to be able to manage it automatically. I didn't talk about referring expression, so it's a sub problem of synonyms. So here, if you look at this very specific sentence, which is the unique ring forged by a friend of mine is made of gold, the unique ring forged by a friend of mine is engraved, the unique ring blah 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 can be used to rule them all. So this is the first way to say things. Another sentence which is just below is the unique ring forged by a friend of mine is made of gold. This ring is engraved. It can be used to rule them all. In fact, the second sentence is much nicer. And this is the concept of referring expression. The first time you talk about something, you use quite a complex reference, which is here the unique ring forged by a friend of mine. And after that, the second time and the third time, you will use something lighter, like this ring, this jewel, or it. And what is the difference here with synonyms? Because it also uses some randomness. The issue is that you have to retain current gender and number, which actually changes. You can say l'anneau est en or, ce bijou est somptueux, versus l'anneau est en or, cette bague est somptueuse. And in fact, when you say somptueuse, you're still talking about l'anneau, but actually you are using the referring expression cette bague, which is feminine. So you are using a feminine thing to talk about anneau, which is a masculine. And you also might have to anticipate next references, at least in French. For instance, when you talk about ces boucles d'oreilles se portent en toute occasion. Somptueux, ce bijou est en or. When you say somptueux, you still refer to ces boucles d'oreilles, but you use a masculine singular form to talk with it. Last group of function is punctuation, spacing, capitalization, and contraction. So here, typically, when you do natural language generation, we end up with full, let's say, small issues, but that are tedious to solve. Typically, you have double punctuation. You have two dots, one following another, and you don't know where the dot comes from, because dots are anonymous. So it's very difficult to find where in the template it has been generated. So here, the engine is completely automatic. It just removes the double punctuation. It manages capitalization automatically. It also manages contractions automatically. For instance, it will change le hebdomadaire into a l'hebdomadaire. It's not that easy because when you say le hérisson, you don't wish to change it. It's not l'hérisson, but le hérisson. In fact, this contraction issues, you have it in all languages, I think except German. You have it in English, Italian, Spanish. Typically, you will say an apple, an hour, but you will say a helmet. I mean, a helmet and hour look quite the same, but for one you will put n, and for the other one you just leave a helmet as is. So we are done about the features. So you develop templates using VS Code with syntax highlighting. So this is slide 23. You have quite an extensive documentation which is publicly available. You can even make some tests directly in the browser. So you can put small templates in the browser and generate the corresponding text. So it's very handy to make quick tests. There's an API. I'll go very fast through that, but you have two main endpoints. You can load a template, which will be stored either on disk or on S3, and you have another endpoint to render text sending data. So it's very handy if you have a microservice architecture and you don't want to necessarily work in JavaScript or Java. Here you have the Swagger, but I'll go very fast on that. Yes, about the availability. So the Rosa Energy is available on Orange Artificial Intelligence Marketplace, which is powered by Orange Business Services. So it's a marketplace where you can actually buy different artificial intelligence services. So what do you have, because you have to pay, what do you have more than the free open source version? You have a front end, which is not available in the public version. So it's a web interface that eases the edition and management of templates. So the idea is to use it. It doesn't replace VS Code or Git, but it can be used in combination with VS Code or Git. You have a pre-configured template, which is a sales report. You just upload sales figures and you will get an out-of-the-box report. And you also have hosting. So you have the API, which is hosted professionally by Orange, which is a service in itself. You don't have to host it yourself. So these are the screenshots of what is available through the Orange IR marketplace, but I'll go through that very fast. So all the components of the engine are completely open source and will remain. You can report the bugs through GitLab or directly to me. I do about one release per week, most of the time debug and updating dependency. You have a company which is called Adventa, which is specialized in energy, based in Paris, which provide commercial support on Rosé Energy. So they provide support with SLA on Rosé Energy, which I don't provide. And they also provide professional services. They can develop your NLG application. And you can also ask me if you need expertise on or for very small POCs, so directly or with along with Advent. Do not hesitate to contribute. So you have the projects which are on GitLab. I decided not to put them on GitHub, but on GitLab. Do you have any question?
Yeah, there's a question from Daniel. So have you tested commercial energy platforms and what do they offer that goes beyond Rosé Energy?
Yeah, in fact, I've been working quite a long time for one commercial platform, which is called EasyUp. I worked 9 years for them, so this is why I know NLG so well. And I also worked with Aria, which is another NLG provider. They provide two more things, which I don't provide. For the engine, it's the same kind of level of feature, same kind of feature. You will not find any difference, barely find any difference. They provide often an interface which is designed for business users. So what they say is that business users are able to maintain templates by themselves. I think it's not true because it's too complex, but this is at least what they say and what they sell. And the second thing that they provide pre-configured report for some industries. So I know, for instance, that EasyUp provides pre-configured reports for pharmaceutical industry, which I'm not a specialist of pharmaceutical industry, so I don't provide anything. I just provide the engine itself.
Okay, so another question, is there any post-generation checks based on statistical language models in Rosé Energy?
No, there's no, I would not call it a post-generation check. What I do after, once the texts are generated, in fact, it's two things. The cleanup of capitalization, etc., but which is not based on machine learning. It's more, let's say, mechanical. And the second thing is synonym optimization. So it's based on a stemmer and different algorithms and lematizer, but it's not statistical. Actually, it could be used to improve the quality of the surface of the text, but it's not done today. I see a third question by Paul. Can you detail the different business use cases? Which ones are the easiest to handle? Which ones should arrive in the future, either for traditional or machine learning NLG? Etc., etc. Yeah, it's actually the same. So the easiest ones to handle, describing products is quite easy because if you have the features, you're not far from the text. You don't have to analyze anything when you describe a jewel, for instance. You just generate the text. So these use cases are quite easy. Typically for finance use cases, you have to do it in 2 steps. First step is to analyze the data and then generate the text. Because if you just describe the data, it's very annoying. You say turnover this week was $10, turnover and the week after was $20. It's completely annoying. So you have a first step, which is analyzing data and determining what is interesting to say. So this is not difficult, but it requires obviously more effort. In the future, what I expect to see with machine learning based NLG is all the use cases that are not properly managed today by traditional NLG. So use cases that are based on incomplete data or where data is not, where input data is text. So today, this is not handled at all with traditional NLG, and I expect machine learning NLG to provide answers to that.
Okay, I think it was the last question. So thank you, Ludan. So we go for the next talk. Thank you very much. So please welcome Philippe from Kili Technology, and he will talk about data augmentation. Philippe, can you present your...
Yes. I think maybe a little out, I think. Thanks everyone for being there, and thanks Bingchen for the hosting. I'm presenting my screen now. Be able to see it now. So please don't hesitate to tell me if anything seems odd around the presentation and the behavior. Well, so today we're going to speak about data augmentation in NLP and try to understand what technique does really work and how you can use it to achieve the extra performance your prediction model needs. So, we will shortly introduce our strategies at Kili, and then take a long walk about the different use cases of data augmentation and see it applied. And we'll take a deep dive in a special method that is called counterfactual data augmentation that can be of help in some use cases. And we'll then have a quick view at the further work. Well, so as you all know, more data is produced every day, and a huge part of this data is unstructured and needs to be labeled to unleash its full potential, as most AI algorithms are supervised. Yet, labeling data remains a pain point in the development of an AI project for two main reasons. The first is that it's often costly to annotate, and the third, since it's driven by the time demands a lot of time and huge volumes of data. And also a second pain point can be the quality of data that needs to be monitored. That's what we solve at Kili, as we are an unstructured data annotation tool covering different data such as text, images, phrase, or PDF. Well, so on the way that we found to reduce the annotation cost, one of those can be the generation of data. But there is still there are lots of techniques and even more use cases and even more models. How do I choose the data augmentation technique for my use case? So since data augmentation has been proven very useful in image projects, it's also used in NLP tasks, and especially useful when data can be hard to collect. For example, an example can be the use of data for chatbot purposes, in which there is kind of an egg and chicken problem, where quality data desperately needs users and data, quality algorithm and quality chatbot, but we won't get that till we get a good chatbot, because it can be put into production. So data augmentation is an incredibly powerful tool and can serve those two purposes that are really useful, that are increase accuracy on the task, and also provide robustness for to help put those models into production. And that's what we will see in the remaining of the talk. First of all, let's see how data augmentation is so efficient. We'll go through a different state-of-the-art data augmentation technique that are present right now, such as, so the first one is the keyboard technique, keyboard augmentation technique that simulates typos in the text, and so hopefully will help the text, the model be more resilient and more robust towards typo. But there are also techniques such as synonym substitution, where we will, in our use case, use the WordNet dictionary. And you can see there also an example where the test word was replaced by the exam word. And third, we will also use an embedding substitution augmentation that will this time use previously computed embeddings and such substitute the word in question by a word that is really similar in this embedding, like distance. And ultimately, we will use also the back translation method that has also proven very useful, especially on Kaggle competition, for example. And this can completely rewrite a full sentence, as sometimes when you traduce back and forth the sentence, you obtain a whole new sentence that can be really clarifying for the model. Let's talk rapidly about our classical pipeline that can be easily reproduced. If you ask me for the code, so test set is first of all isolated, and then the augmentation takes place with the creation of the new examples. Then the text is pre-processed with stemming and lemmatization to reduce the derivationally related form of a word to a common same token that can help better discriminate when there are many use of the same derived form of a word. Then each model is trained with a grid search on a dedicated data set. So it's so we can find its hyperparameters, its best hyperparameters, and ultimately we test the performance around the initial test set. Furthermore, we'll to try to cover our first question, that is, how do I choose this my data augmentation technique? We'll we'll use three different directions to cover all the use case. That will be the size of the trained data set, and try to show the result on using only 50, 80, or 100% of data, of trained data. Then using also different models that can that will be so support vector machines, random forest, logistic regression, or naive Bayes, and also a different data sets. So we chose 4 that are that cover different different direction again. So they can be all level of speeches, from mail to articles, with also tweets. They are all multiple classes, so from 3 to 20 classes, and they can be balanced or imbalanced. And the results on those data was multiple and allowed us to isolate some key insights. First of all, for very literary data, such as mails or article, and for example, the 20 news data set, the data augmentation technique that works best are the synonym and embedding augmenters that allow to gain a 5 to 7.5% increase in accuracy, and but also this indifferentially of the size of the trained data set, and so allowed us to use up to 50% less total data. For this use case, the ideal model is random forest. And for very short text, on the other hand, for example, tweets, the advised method is more keyword augmentation, that is very fast to compute and bring up to 1.5% increase. And ultimately, the back translation technique is has proven very useful for for the smallest data set. So that were BBC and hate speech data set that maybe that has this strength to be able to create a whole new sentence. Well, but what if those data augmentation techniques don't work on a specific data set? And for this, we will so for this, let's dip into another example that can be really useful. For example, when data is that has a totally different method. Here, just to start with, the dataset that we will use is the IMDb dataset, where we use movie reviews that are classified, that needs to be classified as positive or negative. Pretty sure many people know this dataset. And the task will be a little different, as we will try to, in counterfactual data augmentation, we change we ask labelers to write again the meaning of to change the meaning of the review by replacing keywords in it. For example, if a review is states as, first of all, this movie is not a comedy, you will, or says that, secondly, the movie is slow and boring, this review is obviously negative, and the task will be to rewrite it as positive. So, for example, one example could be to change the word nice and interesting. As you can see, there are many ways to change the sentence. So, so many ways to create new examples to train our model. So again, on the data pipeline, we will use also pre-process all the text, determine the parameters on a dedicated data set, and then train the model and test it on an array on different data set. So this and here can show the real strengths of counterfactual data augmentation. Is that when we train a model only on the original data that was that is from the original data set, and a model only on the revised data, so the data that was that were original reviews and whose meaning and label has been changed. We can now we obtain quite similar results, for which the original accuracy, the test accuracy is around 85 to 90%, and the accuracy computed on the opposite data is really low, which is quite interesting, as it allows us to notice that models are not robust against the counterfactual version. So this is the first key input, and so this is a real threat for production model, as they could be really easily fooled or tricked into bad classifying and bad understanding of the sentence. So, secondly, and interestingly, and to verify the hypothesis we made, we trained a logistic regression model also on an original data, and on a model that uses both data, so the original and the revised data combined. So the output is really interesting, as it shows that the word that were considered the best predictors, the word or the tokens that were considered the best predictors, were sometimes similar, for example, great, best, amazing, fun, and so on, but could be really different. For example, the original model considered the words such as classic, young, romantic as useful to detect the positive meaning, whereas the combined model gave its interest more to good, fantastic, awesome words that make much more sense. So it seems that providing the model with a data and its counterfactual complement helps in discovering the real words that gather all the meaning of the label. Itself will help it to be more precise, and that's what the rest of the study showed for us, as it allows us to when using almost all of the original data and a part of revised data, to have really strong, better performance on many models for this revised, this combined data set. So up around 1% increase in accuracy. And as we've shown before, it's now resilient to counterfactual data, so modified data, and finally to what could be production data. So robust to counterfactual data. But why is it that interesting? Well, counterfactual data is really interesting when it comes to cost of labeling. And to prove that, we've set up a small experiment where we tried to generate movie reviews, to reproduce the same task, generating the reviews, and on the other hand, asking for labelers to do the counterfactual task, while just rewriting data to change the label. So here we see that the review, this film was excellent, is rewritten towards this film was awful. And we then measured the time taken per word, and the results are quite striking, as clearly counterfactual data appears much easier to produce, as up to 3 times less expensive, and also that it's much, and that was the Labeler's insight on this project, is that to produce, for example, here in this example, to produce a review of a movie, you need to have seen it, or even more than that, to have a clear opinion on it. Whereas to write the opposite, to create the counterfactual opposite of a review, you just need to understand the language. And that's really extendable to many use cases where, if we come back to our example on chatbot, and we want, for example, to classify many demand to chatbot, for example, for an article and so on, there are so many the Labeler has so many imagination to create the first sentences, but then with counterfactual it can be automated and to generate all the possible outcomes. Well, so to conclude, I like to come back to the different points. So we've shown how our classic data augmentation technique can be really efficient depending on the use cases we want to apply it to, but also how when it becomes less effective, counterfactual data can be of help, and especially in reducing the cost of annotation while keeping this increase in accuracy, and still helping making the model more robust. Well, on the further work, I'll dedicate some more time to. I'll try to enlarge the data augmentation pipeline I've used to more datasets and more techniques. But I would also like to try to automate the generation of counterfactual data. For example, using style transfer, as this would be the missing part to make this task completely autonomous and help in making it available and easy to use. Well, thanks all for your attention. And please don't hesitate to contact me on all these issues and so on. Do you have any questions?
There's no question. So thank you very much, Philippe, for your talk. And thank you everybody for being here tonight for this meetup. As usual, we'll make the slides available very soon on the meetup page, and we'll also make the recording available. So thank you everyone, and see you next time for the next meetup. And thank you to our speakers, of course.
Thanks a lot.
See you next time. Bye-bye.